Let's talk now about how the fabric is going to integrate with your wireless technology. We have what is known as wireless deployment modes for this. There are three types of wireless deployment modes. We have the fabric mode, where you have a full integration with your fabric. We have an over-the-top deployment mode, where your wireless deployment will operate as a Cisco unified wireless network that you have always worked with, and the fabric will be only a transport for your traditional wireless network. And you can have a mixed mode, where when using mixed mode, some SSIDs will operate in fabric mode and other SSIDs will work in traditional mode. So let's go into it. Remember that regardless of whatever mode you are choosing, you will always have cap web tunnels from your access points to your wireless LAN controllers. So in this case, if these access points are in fabric mode and your wireless LAN controller is in fabric mode, then we still will be setting up cap web tunnels. When having these cap web tunnels, then the wireless LAN controller will be able to notice when a wireless device associates with your network. So in fabric mode, let's say that you have this wireless device A that was associated with this access point that is connected to this H node X, and we have another wireless device B that is associated to this access point that is connected to this H node Y. Then the wireless LAN controller that is operating in fabric mode will have to notify these locations to your control plane node using map register messages. This information comes from your wireless LAN controller association database, and it will land into your control plane node's host tracking database. So your host tracking database will have two entries for these devices. Device endpoint ID A will be mapped into the RLOC H node X, and device and this other device having the endpoint ID B will be mapped to the RLOC H node Y. So if these two devices wanted to communicate at some point, a VXLAN tunnel will be created in order to let them communicate with each other. Remember that we're going to transport traffic with the fabric overlay. So in this case, we are not transporting the traffic using the cap web tunnels. We are transporting the traffic using the VXLAN tunnels. This is the basis of the fabric mode, where we have a fully integration with the fabric. The wireless LAN controller will communicate with the control plane nodes. In this case, we are not going to use something that is known as dynamic interfaces. If you have worked with traditional wireless LAN controllers, you know that you will need dynamic interface in order to let the wireless LAN controller communicate traffic between A02 11 frames and A02.3 Ethernet frames. But in this case, the wireless LAN controller is not moving traffic, so it is not breaching between both technologies, and we will not need a dynamic interface anymore. With the fabric mode, we can reach automation, because all of this can be automated with the Catalyst Center, formerly known as the NA Center. Now let's review what is over the top. Remember that, as we said previously, regardless of your deployment mode, you always create cap web tunnels. So in over-the-top mode, you still are using cap web tunnels, because this is the traditional mode that you have always worked with. This has been known as the Cisco Unified Wireless Network deployment. So in this case, your wireless LAN controllers holds a database where it knows about every single wireless device that has associated with the network. So for instance, if we had this device here that belongs to SSID A, and we have another device here that is associated with SSID A, and this is device A and device B, and they want to communicate with each other, then the traffic will be sent through this CAP-WAP tunnel to the wireless LAN controller, and the wireless LAN controller, given it has this database and it knows where each wireless device is associated at, it will send this traffic through the adequate CAP-WAP tunnel in order to send this traffic to device B. So notice that this is a traditional network. We are only using the fabric here as a transport. There may be some VXLAN tunnels created here internally in order to transport these CAP-WAP tunnels, but that is completely irrelevant and transparent from my wireless LAN controller standpoint and from my access point standpoint. They only see that they are operating in traditional mode. These access points are operating in traditional mode. This wireless LAN controller is operating in traditional mode, and they are working in traditional mode. They don't really care that we have a fabric going on in between. Remember that with this traditional mode, the wireless LAN controller is in charge of moving traffic between wired devices and wireless devices. So in order to do so, we will need a dynamic interface here, so we can create this communication between wired users and so my SSID can be mapped somehow into a VLAN that exists in the wired world. We will have to create a dynamic interface for every single VLAN that we want to work with. For instance, if I had, for instance, here another a wireless device C that belonged to an SSID B, then I will have to create here another dynamic interface if I wanted this SSID to be mapped into a different VLAN. So in order to communicate or in order to bridge traffic between AO2.11 frames and AO2.3 frames, then the wireless LAN controller is going to do so, and it is going to use these dynamic interfaces to be connected to the wired world. It is connected to the wireless world through the CAP-WAP tunnels, but it is connected to the wired world through these dynamic interfaces. So we will need dynamic interfaces in this case. So in summary, the over-the-top solution is a traditional Cisco unified wireless network operation using dynamic interfaces at the wireless LAN controller. The fabric is just a transfer for the traditional operation. There are no benefits from this fabric integration. So you might have several reasons for this. For instance, you are migrating your wired users first, and you want to migrate, test your SD access solution, test your fabric, and then migrate your wireless users later. You might be in between a buying cycle. You only have enough licenses to migrate your wired users, and maybe you might want to buy some more licenses in order to migrate your wireless users. Maybe your company has a different team that is in charge of the wireless network, and they are not really keen into migrating into the fabric mode just yet. They want to maintain your traditional Cisco Unified Wireless Network as it is. For some policy they might have. You might also have old access points or old wireless LAN controllers or old software within your wireless LAN controllers that will prevent you from migrating into fabric mode. So remember that in order to turn your access point or your wireless LAN controller into fabric mode, you need certain versions of hardware and software, and you might not have that. So let's talk about the other deployment mode that we have. It is mixed mode. Remember that regardless of whatever deployment you're using, you will be always using cab web tunnels. So you will have cab web tunnels from your access points to your wireless LAN controllers. But in this case, with mixed mode, you may have non-fabric SSIDs. So for all the devices that are going to use this SSID, then the traffic between these devices will be sent in traditional mode. That means that it will be sent inside the cab web tunnels. But at the same time, when using mixed mode, you may have fabric mode SSIDs. So if you have devices that are using these fabric mode SSIDs, for these particular devices, the wireless LAN controller will have to send a map register message. So the control node here is able to update the host tracking database. So the communication between these devices that exist in the fabric mode SSID will be performed by VXLAN tunnels. So remember that given we are also using non-fabric SSIDs, we are going to create dynamic interfaces here at your wireless LAN controllers in order to bridge traffic for these non-fabric SSIDs between AO2.11 traffic and AO2.3 frames. So it is a mixed version of the two solutions. So in summary, if you have mixed mode, you have fabric enabled for some wireless LANs or SSIDs, and some wireless LAN or SSIDs are fabric enabled. So for the non-fabric, remember that traffic will be sent through the cab web tunnels, and for the fabric enabled SSIDs, you will use VXLAN. Mixed mode is supported on the same access point or in different access points. This only works for a new deployment, so you must configure your wireless LAN controller from scratch in order to put it in mixed mode. If you had a wireless LAN controller that was working in fabric mode, this will not work. If you have a wireless LAN controller that was working in traditional mode, this will not work. This must be a brand new wireless LAN controller that you are going to configure from scratch. You might want to, for instance, place it reset it to factory settings before placing it in mixed mode. And remember that in this case, we're also going to use dynamic interfaces for your non-fabric SSIDs. That's it.